Next on the docket, there is finally resolution, or kind of resolution, to the NFL concussion lawsuit. Federal judge just approving this afternoon the settlement between former players and the league. Compensates people suffering from a variety of problems, including Alzheimer's, Lou Gehrig's disease. A player could get up to $5 million depending upon the severity of the problem. There is no cap on the total awards. That total could top $1 billion. Okay, my question, Doug, we're starting to see in this break. Current players, let's say they retire next year. 5 years from now, they start to exhibit some of the symptoms. Is it going to be harder or easier for them to collect damages that these former players just got in the settlement?
I would say much harder. The lawsuit was basically saying the NFL knew people were getting injured and dementia and everything else, but they weren't saying anything about it. And then players were continuing to play, get more injured. Now any player that's playing currently is aware of this lawsuit, is aware of the medicine, and they're playing anyway. So basically there's an assumption of the risk at this point, where if you're playing football, especially professional football, you know that there's a good likelihood that you're going to have permanent damage.
But if I go skydiving and they make me sign that waiver before I go up there, and my chute doesn't open, don't tell me I can't sue, right?
No, I don't think so, but I don't think that that's an analogous situation. This is presumably a class action. Do former players have to opt out of it, the settlement, in order to collect damages
I don't know
later?
how it could be a class action because all the damages are probably different. It's probably a litigation that's handled as a group, but I don't think it's a technical class action.
Well, no, they have individualized plaintiffs as representatives. Wasn't McMahon one of the plaintiffs and all that?
Yes, he was.
Aren't these current players going to now have to sign waivers 7 miles long acknowledging this lawsuit, acknowledging the evidence adduced at the lawsuit?
Jimmy, doesn't the net result, though, me say, wait a minute, you changed late hits, you can't clothesline, you changed some of the equipment, you changed all these rules, you can't hit me as above the shoulders and all the rest. Why, as a player, can't I say, timeout? You went through all these rules here to mitigate my risks. Why shouldn't I have assumed you were giving me a safer environment?
Your question was whether it was going to be harder. There's always going to be a lawsuit, and there's always going to be a lawyer willing to bring the lawsuit. But your question was whether it would be harder, and I agree. There's no question that the assumption of the risk is now all of the elements of it are in place, and I think that waivers are going to be far more specific, so it's going to be harder.
But there'll be other legal ramifications. So now that we know, and Doug made a great point, I mean, we were talking before, it's almost like saying you didn't know cigarettes were bad for you, and now they tell you, hey, cigarettes are bad for you, may cause cancer, and all of this will cause cancer. If you go ahead and use them, now you've assumed the risk. But what about a child? So right now we're talking about adults who say, okay, fine, I'm going to take the money. What about someone who puts their 7-year-old out there? First of all, is there a criminal responsibility to that parent? Is that parent endangering the welfare of the child? And then secondly, does Child Protective step in and maybe even remove that child from the parent's custody? Because if you put that kid into the same situation of having potentially the same injuries, but achieved a different way, I think that you may have those kids removed.
I got a practical thing. How about insurance? If you think Pop Warner, high school football, and a whole lot of college football is going to afford some of these new premiums, we could be seeing a new dawn about the affordability of football in a lot of levels. Maybe not the NFL, but a whole bunch of other places.
Uber alles, because no Jewish mother is letting me go out there and play football and get my head mashed in.
And on that note here, I thank the table. They disregard my questions, tell me I'm wrong, and then do their own closing statements. All right, I'll have Hudson headlines coming up next. Stay with us.